trusted that God would take care of him. He told Sarai what had happened, and she trusted too. She ordered everyone to pack the tents onto the camels. "Gather the food into bundles and get ready for a long trip," she told them. "But where are we going?" they asked. "I do not know," she said, smiling. Both Abram and Sarai were happy to wait for God to tell them where they were going. God led Abram and Sarai, all the camels, hundreds of sheep and goats, many servants and all their children, to the land of Canaan. There the Lord said to Abram, "This is the land I will give to your children." Abram and Sarai moved their tents near the sacred trees of Mamre at Hebron. The big trees there gave them plenty of shade. Many years passed, and there was still one thing they wished for, and that was a child. So many years had gone by, though, that Sarai was too old to have children. Abram and Sarai didn't understand how God could have promised them children. They felt confused. What had God meant? Then, one night, Abram heard God speak to him again. Abram, who was by then an old man, said, "Lord, the one thing you could give me you haven't, and that is a child. Why haven't we had any children?" "You will have a child, though, Abram," God said. "Look up and count the stars." Abram saw the sky stretch from horizon to horizon, stars blinking in every direction, and he wondered what God could mean. "One day there will be as many children of your children as there are stars," God said. Abram had a choice. He could decide not to believe the Lord, because he didn't understand how God could do this great thing. Or Abram could choose to trust what God said, even though he had no idea how it would happen. It was a little like letting someone else lead you through a room when your eyes are closed. You cannot see, but the person by your side helps you along step by step. That's what God did for Abram. He stayed by his side every step of his life. Abram waited and believed that God would keep his word. The years went by, until finally Abram was 99 years old. Then the Lord appeared to Abram again and reminded him of the promise he had made. As a sign of how serious the promise was, God asked Abram to make a special mark on his body and see that all the men and boys in his camp did the same. This showed the promise was meant to last forever. God would not forget. Then he gave Abram and Sarai new names. Abram became Abraham, which means father of many, and Sarai became Sarah, which means princess. God promised Abraham that Sarah would have a baby, and that the baby would grow into the father of many children. They would all become God's chosen people. A short time later, Abraham saw 3 men walking nearby. He ran over to them and bowed low. "Please, come and stay with us, and let me get you something to eat and drink." Abraham told Sarah to bake some bread as fast as she could. Then he hurried to kill his fattest, choicest calf, and told his servant to cook it as quickly, but as well as he could. Now Abraham didn't realize that one of the 3 visitors was actually the Lord. When Abraham gave the visitors their food, the Lord said, "Where is your wife, Sarah?" "In the tent," Abraham said. "Sarah will soon have a son," the Lord said. Sarah had been listening through the tent wall. When she heard this, she thought it a strange joke by the visitor. They were too old for babies. So she laughed. Then the visitor said, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord to do?" And when he said that, Abraham knew the visitor was the Lord. When it was time for the men to leave, Abraham walked with them to the top of a nearby hill. From there they looked down on the city of Sodom. The Lord said, "I have heard how terribly evil the people are who live in Sodom. If it's true, then I will destroy that place." Then the two men who had travelled with the Lord, who were really angels in disguise, set off for Sodom. The Lord stayed with Abraham. Abraham wasn't sure what he should do. There was a question he wanted to ask of the Lord, but did he dare? He knew, though, that the Lord was his friend as well as his God. So he swallowed hard and asked, "Lord, what if there are 50 good people in Sodom? What will happen to them? It would not be like you to kill the good people with the bad." The Lord said, "I will not harm the city if there are 50 people who still care." Then Abraham repeated his question several times, each time using smaller numbers. Would he spare the city for 45 good people? For 40? 30? 20? Or for 10? Each time the Lord replied that he would spare the city if there were that number of good people. The only bright spot in the evil city of Sodom was a man called Lot. Lot was a nephew of Abraham. He lived in Sodom with his wife and 2 daughters. Lot met the angels, who were disguised as men, and said, "Come to my house. There you will be safe from the people here." It was dark, and Lot and his guests had finished eating when suddenly they heard shouting outside. Lot opened the door and saw hundreds of men carrying torches and shoving their way towards his home. "Give us the 2 men who are visiting you," they shouted at Lot. Then the angels caused all the evil men outside to go blind. That way they couldn't even find the door to Lot's house. "Hurry," the angels said to Lot. "The Lord cannot stand the evil of Sodom, and he will destroy it by tomorrow." The angels led Lot, his 2 daughters, and his wife out of the city in a great hurry. Then, just after sunrise, the Lord caused fire to come out of the sky and drop onto Sodom and nearby Gomorrah, which was also an evil place. Lot's wife was not supposed to, but she looked back to watch. Instantly, she became a pillar of salt. God had kept his promise to Abraham. He took care of the good people in Sodom. When the 3 strangers visited Sarah and Abraham, the Lord promised they would have a baby within a year. Sure enough, in less than a year, the impossible happened. Sarah, far too old to have children, gave birth to a son. Abraham was 100 years old when Sarah's baby was born. He and Sarah were so happy